This is why Jaxson Dart should be the favorite for this year's Heisman Trophy. Yeah, I said it. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, I'm Stephen Willis, a former staff member at Ole Miss and a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports. Today on the show, we talk about Jaxson Dart and his road to the Heisman Trophy, but he's not the only Rebel that is going to be a favorite to win a big award this offseason. Ole Miss rebounded against Missouri both figuratively and literally to get the dub, and Ole Miss was one disaster inning away from sweeping the Iowa Hawkeyes. We tell you who stood out in that series. This week, players will be on the channel as a part of our relationship with the Grove Collective. And a huge thank you to Keith Carter for coming on the show yesterday. Subscribe now so you don't miss a thing. We want to thank all of you that subscribed recently and tell you it means a ton. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the everydayers who make the show what it is. This episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little bit further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner for you? Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Check them all out today at nissanusa.com. All right, we're getting ready for the most anticipated football season in potentially Ole Miss history, especially with the number of people that are living in and around the Oxford area. And because of that, Ole Miss has been building up to this point, and their roster is, as Keith Carter said in his interview this weekend, the roster is in as good a shape as it's ever been at Ole Miss. And the main reason for that is Jaxson Dart. Jaxson Dart is going to come into this season as one of the favorites for the Heisman Trophy. All the betting lines have him in the top 10. But I'm going to tell you why he should be number one. Last season, he had excellent numbers, 233 for 358, 3,364 yards, 23 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He was probably the second most effective quarterback in the Southeastern Conference, but behind the Heisman Trophy winner, Jayden Daniels. Carson Beck was also a good quarterback, and Brady Cook was good as well. But I don't think either one of them are on Jaxson Dart's level talent-wise. And when you look at the players that are going to be on the award watch list and everything going into the Heisman Trophy season, there's nobody on that list that is more talented than Jaxson Dart. When you look down the Dillon Gabriels, the Carson Becks, those guys, Jalen Milroe, when you go down the list, Shedeur Sanders, there's a whole bunch of hype. There's a whole bunch of lack of substance, or you're going to have a really good player that doesn't have a lot of substance to him either, and none of which have the whole package that Jaxson Dart does. Jaxson Dart has a chance to be unbelievably special this year and make all the news in the world. I'll put it to you like this. If Ole Miss wins 11 regular season games in 2024, Jaxson Dart's going to win the Heisman. Period. There's nobody that's going to be close. Ole Miss is going to be the it story going into college football season. If it becomes the it story in next November or December, all of a sudden, everybody's tune is going to change, and Jaxson Dart's going to start acquiring votes all over the place. He has the benefit of being from outside the region, which means Jaxson Dart, if Ole Miss wins 11 games, he's going to carry the Southeast, and he's probably going to carry the West because of his time playing high school ball in Utah, being a kid from that area, and playing football at USC before Caleb Williams. Jaxson Dart has all the intangibles to win the Heisman Trophy, and he has the talent to do it. The problem that Ole Miss is going to face, they need 11 wins because, let's be honest, okay? If Jaxson Dart and Ole Miss win 10 games, he's not going to get the benefit of the doubt that Jayden Daniels got a year ago. When they went 9-3, he ended up winning the Heisman Trophy. That is a situation where Dillon Gabriel or some other major blue blood, Carson Beck, is probably going to go ahead of him in the rankings. Jaxson Dart has all the talent available to him, all the ability to get it done, but pre-perceived biases. Ole Miss is not going to win a tie. Jaxson Dart is not going to win a tie. If Carson Beck and Jaxson Dart are considered the same, Carson Beck's probably going to get that. So it's going to be imperative for Ole Miss to win 11 games, and preferably one of those games against the Georgia Bulldogs. It's going to be important for Jaxson Dart to stay upright, and he also needs to have a pretty good game against Georgia, all of which I think are possible. If you look last season, he had big games against LSU and big home games. Penn State, which was the Peach Bowl, and Texas A&M was the home game. He plays pretty well at home, and we'll see exactly how that goes. Now, Georgia has a chance to – their defense is going to be all top 100 players. I mean, that's ridiculous to think about, but it is. A big game for Jaxson Dart against the Georgia Bulldogs will be a major step in the right direction. I think he's going to do it. And I think he's going to bring home a Heisman Trophy to the University of Mississippi. And I think that will be very, very cool and set a legacy that nobody else associated with the University of Mississippi, Ole Miss, can touch. That includes those that have the last name Manning. That includes Matt Corral for people that like Matt Corral. That includes Jake Gibbs. That includes them all. If Jaxson Dart does what I think he can and will do in 2024, he is going to end up the all-time greatest player in the history of Ole Miss. I said it. But he isn't the only one that is on the award watch list going into this fall. The main one that everybody needs to pay attention to is Tre Harris. Tre Harris has a legitimate chance to win the Bilentnikoff. Last season, he had 54 catches, 985 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Everybody's like, well, Steve, those numbers aren't very good. Well, take into the fact that a quarter of the season, Tre missed and did not play. And then add on to that, and he's somewhere probably in the vicinity of 70 catches, 1,300 yards, and 10 to 11 touchdowns if he'd have played those other games. So that tells you how talented of a player this was. The Peach Bowl was completely not fair to where nobody on Penn State's team could cover him. It was just unfair to go up against those cornerbacks. Tre Harris worked them all. He was uncoverable. His hands, his speed, his athleticism. It was a scary, scary problem. They basically made it as like, hey, if you want to blitz zero against these guys, I want to see if you can defend this guy. And they couldn't. And there's a lot of people that's going to fall into that category in 2024. The major teams on Ole Miss's schedule in 2024, you have the LSU Tigers, who secondarily has a little bit of an issue talent-wise, had trouble matching up with him a year ago. The Oklahoma Sooners, which can do some shootout stuff. We'll see exactly how Brent Venables and the defense goes, but they might have some guys that can match up on the outside. And then you have the Georgia Bulldogs, who is the main team that Tre Harris needs to worry about in coverage. But if you look at the other 9 teams on the roster, he should be able to eat pretty well. And Tre Harris could be in line for a Bilentnikoff level season, especially if Jaxson Dart wins the Heisman Trophy. We're talking about an offense that has a chance to be unbelievably special in 2024. And it's largely because of Jaxson Dart and Tre Harris. And if those two have the type of years that they are capable of having, it's going to be Katie bar the door for the defenses. And whenever you look at what Ole Miss has defensively, that's a problem as well. Now, other players that are going to be watch list level players that you need to pay attention to, offensively, Nate Kelepo, and at tight end, Caden Prieskorn. I think Caden Prieskorn has a really good shot at the John Mackey Award this year. Now, on defensively, you will have Walter Nolen and Princely Umanmielen are going to pop up on watch lists. Chris Paul is going to show up, and Trey Amos. There's a lot of players. when you look at the top level talent on Ole Miss's football team this year, there's a lot of potential award winners on that team. And when you look at how talented they are, they have a chance to go really, really far. Ole Miss in this environment to where, I don't know, the NCAA, Big Ten, SEC, all the chaos that is around college football, Ole Miss has navigated that chaos better than just about anybody. There's been very few schools that have been able to keep up at the level that Ole Miss has. I mean, Missouri's done well. I think Georgia's done well, but they haven't really had to change very much. Florida State's done pretty well. And think those are the main schools that are kind of propped up in this era as well. But those are the players that have a chance to win awards this season, starting with Jaxson Dart. And I think everybody should be pretty fired up about that. Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen of the day. Ole Miss rebounded both figuratively and literally versus the Missouri Tigers to get back on track. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little bit further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with capabilities to take your new adventure to the next level. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives and great escapes. I own a Nissan Rogue. In fact, my wife named it Russell for some reason, but we do have a Nissan Rogue. It is perfect for city drives and great escapes. Class exclusive Google built-in is your always updating assistant to call on for just about anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistants, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment center. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. Nissan's incredible lineup also includes the 2024 Nissan Pathfinder. It has room up to 8 and expansive cargo capacity and advanced available 4x4 capability. And with 284 horsepower and up to 6,000 pounds of towing, when your adventure calls, the Pathfinder is here to answer. So take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop Nissan.com. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. All right, so in the first segment, we talked about why Jaxson Dart is probably going to win the Heisman Trophy in 2024. Hey, I got red and blue glasses on. That's fine. If you want to call me a homer, look at the name of the podcast. I'm not hiding it. So we need to talk about what was a pretty good weekend in other sports for Ole Miss sports against Missouri in basketball and against Iowa playing baseball. If you look at the basketball game, Ole Miss won the game against the Mizzou Tigers 84-78. They shot the ball pretty well, 50%, 10 of 26 from three-pointers. They had 16 turnovers. They actually out-rebounded Missouri, which, for a team that's allergic to rebounding, it's nice to see that they were able to win that battle. They won them 35-22, 23 fouls on the day. Mizzou actually shot the ball pretty well at 54%, and especially in the second half of the game. Their three-point shot was 6 of 19. They had 14 turnovers, and like I said, 22 rebounds and 29 fouls. Now, this is an interesting situation in this game. About 5 minutes left in the game, Ole Miss was up by like 12 or 13 points. And it just got to the point where every time that Jamarian Sharp or Musa Cisse were on the floor, they were immediately getting fouled. Ole Miss would go to the line, miss 2 free throws. Missouri would go down and score a basket. And that just happened to the point where I think Missouri got it down to like 2 points at one time. Really interesting stuff, kind of. But they would just, the big guy comes in, foul him, put him on the line. That's an empty possession for Ole Miss. go down, score a basket, cut into the league. And Missouri almost came all the way back from 20 points down, essentially doing that. Ole Miss they're 20-9 or something like that right now, with no front court, none. Even Jamin Brakefield, who I like Jamin Brakefield as a player, but he is a quintessential Euro style player. He's very finesse based. He's very out on the perimeter type player. Ole Miss needs a banger. They need somebody that can go in there. And Musa Cisse and Jamarian Sharp, for whatever reason, Ole Miss has 2 7-footers that are allergic to rebounding and loose balls. They also don't shoot free throws very well. And because of that, teams over the course of the year have figured out the Ole Miss Rebels. And they realize how they need to attack and the way Ole Miss plays defense. And this is what's going to happen if you switch and you play the ball here. And these basketball coaches are good enough to where you get 2 or 3 mismatches and you end up with a wide open shot. They've been doing that to Ole Miss for the better part of the month of February. Ole Miss beat Mississippi State like the last weekend of January, like January 30th or something like that, to win their, 17th or 18th game. Ole Miss didn't win their 20th game until March 2nd. It's been a rough February for Ole Miss basketball. Now, like I said, we've talked about all of this. Ole Miss going to the NCAA tournament and Ole Miss having a successful season have become 2 different conversations. It's okay to be disappointed with not going to the NCAA tournament. It is not okay to be disappointed in this basketball team, because for a team that on short notice with a transition class and the transfer portal that they hit relatively quickly, they were able to up the win total in the Southeastern Conference from 3 to right now they're at 7. And you have a road game at Georgia on Tuesday night, and you have a home game versus Texas A&M a little bit later on in the week. And if Ole Miss can get both of those games, which are 2 winnable games, even with all the situation going on with Ole Miss's basketball program, both of those games are very winnable games. Ole Miss has a legit chance at 9-9. And that was the number, the line that I said that Ole Miss, that should be the goal of what we get in year 1 under Chris Beard. We talked to Keith Carter over the weekend, and he mentioned that Chris Beard shares a lot of traits that his former college basketball coach had in Rob Evans. And honestly, I see it. I whenever Keith pointed that out, I saw it. And as this grows and as this culture gets built, I think Chris Beard has a chance to be really successful in Oxford, Mississippi. Now, it's going to take some work. It's going to take Chris Beard being a little bit different. It's going to take some wins to get into the NCAA tournament. And like I said, it's a math problem at the moment of getting into the NCAA tournament. And I don't know if you can hold that against Chris Beard or the Ole Miss basketball team. It'd be nice if Ole Miss could get in, if Ole Miss could win their last 2 games, for instance. If they win their first game in the SEC tournament against one of the lower teams and maybe pull off an upset on Friday in the SEC tournament, then maybe it becomes interesting. But as it sits right now, it's kind of a math problem. Also, talking about basketball, Coach Yo yesterday just absolutely abused Arkansas to have the winningest conference season in the history of Lady Rebels women's basketball. That includes Van Chancellor. That includes all of them. 12 wins. Nobody's ever done that in women's basketball at Ole Miss. Big time deal. 3 out of the 4 best seasons conference-wise in Ole Miss history have been done by Coach Yo and the Lady Rebs. So I'm very, very excited about what they're doing. And, they clinched the number 3 spot, I think, in the Southeastern Conference. They're going to avoid South Carolina until the championship game. And they're in the same side of the bracket with the LSU Tigers. LSU, Ole Miss played much closer than they did South Carolina. So we'll see exactly how that goes. But I'm pretty fired up about where both of the programs sit basketball-wise at Ole Miss. It's honestly very impressive, especially the women's team. The women's team's killing people right now. I mean, we're talking freshmen being in essentially the whole fourth quarter and what they're doing. And they're unbelievably confident. They're unbelievably relaxed. And we'll see exactly how it goes for them moving forward. Still more to come on Locked On Ole Miss, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Ole Miss was one disaster inning away from sweeping the Iowa Hawkeyes this weekend. We tell you who stood out. You know, get buckets with your first bet with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen of the day, and shout out to the everydayers. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV via the free Fire TV Channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV Channels app. Be part of history. So it's a busy weekend for Ole Miss sports, and men's basketball got the W, women's basketball got the W, and baseball had an interesting situation. Now, we'll start on Sunday, because that was where it ended. And Ole Miss got a big series win. You can see that it got a little bit funny with big, but Ole Miss was able to win 8-3. The big star on Sunday's game was Wes Mendez, in my opinion, and Grayson Chanier. They really pitched the ball really well. Ole Miss had a home run from a backup catcher of all people. And Iowa had trouble with the strike zone like they did for the majority of the weekend. Ole Miss won the game 8-3, the series 2-1, and they broke out the powders for the first time. Now, from this game and this performance, I think there's two things that have come from it. And I think this is a sign of where the direction of this baseball program is going to go. Right now, Ole Miss's baseball team is probably a middling SEC level baseball team. They don't have a high-end starter. They really miss Hunter Elliott. And honestly, Xavier Rivas would help this team out a bunch as well. So look at it like this. Ole Miss is going out there on Friday with a Sunday starter from the very beginning. Their pitching depth is impacted from the loss of the two starting pitchers. But JT Quinn, he hasn't to this point looked like the dude. It looked like he could be, but the problem is his fastball gets killed. His fastball just gets tattooed. So Ole Miss is looking for essentially a Friday night starter. They want a tone setter. They want somebody that they can count on to be honestly, a Doug Nikhazy or Hunter Elliott or somebody like that, like Mike Bianco for more years than not has had. They've tried JT Quinn, didn't work out. They tried, was it Gunnar Dennis? I think that's his name. Dennis on Saturday. That's not really working out either. He's kind of a Saturday or Sunday type starter in the rotation. I think, just personally, I think Grayson Chanier needs to get the ball on a Friday night and just kind of get turned loose. He's kind of deserving of a chance to prove whether or not he can do it with SEC play starting. If everybody remembers in 2022, the year that Ole Miss won the national championship, the opening weekends of the season, the pitching staff looked nothing like the people that were leading the Ole Miss baseball team in Omaha. You weren't getting Dylan DeLucia. You weren't getting Hunter Elliott from the very beginning. You were getting John Gaddis. You were getting those type pitchers. So I think that Ole Miss is trying to figure this out a little bit, and they have some young guys that are really, really impressive. Now, if you look at Friday night, Iowa had a really good pitcher on the mound. Ole Miss survived that. They fought all the way back. Now, Iowa's bullpen is atrocious. It's almost like they practice without a strike zone. But Ole Miss fought back in the 8th inning. At the bottom of the 8th inning, it was 7-7. And then the disaster inning happened, and Iowa won game 1. That's what I mean by a disaster in an inning. Ole Miss came all the way back and tied that game up, and then kind of let things get away from them in the last inning. Then you look at Saturday. You look at the job that Austin Simmons did, the way he came in as a left-hander and just completely closed the door. He had a couple of innings of shutout ball. He had one inning where he threw 6 pitches. He got 3 up, 3 down on 6 pitches. I love innings like that. The whole situation with like Greg Maddux, like where you're probably going to put a bat on it, but there's no way you're going to hit it hard. That mindset, I love that. I love small ball. I love it when teams play baseball and they're allowed to play baseball. I think strikeouts, like Bull Durham said, they're fascist. And this is a more democratic solution when you do that. Austin Simmons looked very good in game 2. And honestly, he got the win, but he also settled down Ole Miss enough to where once their bats got going, you could see they really took off. Wes Mendez had an unbelievable game on Sunday. Absolutely unbelievable. He's somebody that I could see by the end of the year being in the weekend rotation. He looked really good. He started midweek this week, and he looked okay, but he's a lefty with like a 94-mile-an-hour fastball, a looping curveball similar to what Nikhazy and Hunter Elliott threw, really similar to those type guys. And he just was mowing people down today. So we'll see exactly how he does. Now, the downside today, Andrew Fisher got hit in the head with a baseball. The Iowa pitcher was almost, I don't want to say a joke about it, but he was almost dangerous wild as opposed to effective wild. And he absolutely earholed Andrew Fisher. Mike Bianco after the game said that he thinks that may have punctured his eardrum. And I don't know how long that will take. I know his equilibrium will be messed up. So I don't know if I would expect him back until the start of the SEC season, which is a shame because Andrew Fisher has been absolutely knocking the cover off the ball for the Ole Miss Rebels. Jackson Ross, kind of okay, struggled a little bit against Iowa's pitching. That concerns me a little bit because he's going to see some velocity. He's going to see some power with the SEC arms that he's going to see starting in 2 weeks. So we'll see exactly how that goes as well. But Ole Miss got the big series win. They got the win. They're starting to get a little bit right. Like I said, at the beginning of the season, they dug themselves a hole. They have Memphis this week, midweek, and we'll see if Ole Miss can continue stacking W's on top of W's. Ole Miss probably needs 3 out of 3 this weekend. 3 out of 3. They need a sweep going into SEC ball, and we'll see exactly how that goes. I'm pretty excited about that. Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen. Every dayers, we have player interviews slated for this weekend, and we wait on the most anticipated football season at Ole Miss maybe ever, and you can hear about it all here. But for your second listen, Locked On Ole Miss has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, with our national shows that cover every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. And for those of you on YouTube, we'll send you there right now. Hotty toddy, everyone.